Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for being here for our seventh. Hard to believe we've done 6 of these previously, but this is our seventh session in our professional learning series, in which we are hoping to share some great resources with you, the teachers. So my name is Brennan. I am the senior educator here at Science North. I've been working on developing these lessons, these activities through myself and my team, and then also presenting them. And I am excited to share today's, which is our grade 7 webinar with some really great grade 7 resources and things that you can try and things that you can do. So before I do that, though, I do want to take a moment to share my screen and do our landing acknowledgement. So this is what we're doing today. This is our professional learning series. But what I really want to share right now is this screen here, because I think it is important that we do recognize where we are in the land that we're on, and then also the work that we as Science North is doing in terms of reconciliation. So Science North and Dynamic Earth are situated on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Indigenous, Anishinaabe, and Longtay First Nation in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. We give thanks to the Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land since time immemorial and pay respects to their traditions, ways of knowing, and acknowledge their many contributions to innovations in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, past and present. We also recognize the Métis Nation of Ontario for their historic and ongoing contributions. We commit to deepening engagement, relationships, and partnerships in order to advance truth and reconciliation, honor and reflect Indigenous ways of knowing, grow economic opportunities, and collaborate with Indigenous peoples as partners in order to inspire all people to be engaged with science and the world around them. Given that we have teachers coming from not just Sudbury, but across Ontario, joining us for these, if you're viewing this online and live, and you would like to share where you are from and make your landing acknowledgements, you can do so in the comments. And we'd love to see where you're joining us from and make that recognition. That said, just in general, if you ever have any questions or comments or concerns and you're following along as we're doing this, you're more than welcome. Here, I'll stop my screen. You're more than welcome to ask any questions as we go in the chat. This is part of why we wanted to do this live. Is that if you have questions, you have things real time, they're like, well, yeah, but how does this work? Brendan, what are you talking about? That we can answer that live. That said, if you're watching this as a recording, you weren't able to join, we're doing it live. Hello, and thanks for joining us as well. You can also reach out to us by email. It's educators@sciencenorth.ca. Myself, members of our team, are always monitoring that, always checking out for that. So I might be like, hey, can you jump on a Zoom call and show me how you did this? Or it could be anything. We've done a lot of that, just jumping on little calls and just helping out when we need to. So we're here for you as teachers, and really want to be able to support you with that. So with that said, we'll share a little bit about who we are at Science North and kind of what we do. So we do teacher training like we do today, which we're doing virtually. We also do it in person, and we have quite a collection of lesson plans, not lesson plans, of kind of topics that we can cover. So right now we have the ability to do some coding lesson plans or coding teacher workshops at a discounted cost through CanCode, but we also have a slew of science workshops as well that we come and do in person. So last week, for example, we traveled stuff. We went to Aurora to do some teacher workshops with teacher librarians there, for example. And we have that ability. So both virtually like this and in person, we do a lot of teacher training. I also posted a link to our website, which showcases kind of some of the other things that we have. And we're going to do things a little differently today and highlight our website a little bit, because why not? So this is our website. It's at sciencenorth.ca/education. You can see as you scroll down, this is what we're doing now. But as you can scroll down, you can see the other pieces that we have. So the Just for Teachers, which is what you are, is where you would find kind of anything to do with teacher workshops. We do virtual learning, so this is where we jump into schools and do workshops virtually. We do high school programming. You can always come to us. We have on-site programs. We can also hit the road and come to you with that. But in the Just for Teachers part, so in addition to our teacher workshops, so you can see the library of workshops that we can offer. You can see the different coding ones are in there, but also all the science ones. We've just recently developed a high school level coding one as well, if you know anyone that does that. But in this section are also two of our main sources for resources. One is this educator resources part. The other is the Science at Home part. So let's visit Science at Home first, just so you can take a look. This is a project that we did during the pandemic, really with the idea of being able to give teachers kind of easy science experience. I'm going to call them easy wins. You know, that idea that when you do a program, you kind of want that outcome using and learning goals being achieved with minimal materials, minimal prep, minimal work. You can see it goes K to 8. Should pick grade 7 since we're all grade 7 teachers today, but all the same, you can see when you get there, there's a video. So Lowe's internet's a little slow here today. Once it loads this video, material list, as well. Oh, there's video there. So the handouts, lesson plans, anything that you would need to do that lesson is all here. But there's also a video demo that goes with it. The other piece of the pie that we have, and then I'll go back to the Just for Teachers, is our educator resources section. So if we look at this, this is where all our lesson plans eventually end up. So whether it be this series, we did a coding series last year where we did some like professional development through coding. We have some science and tech PD for teachers. And here are some videos, and also just, again, more lesson plans. So we're always developing new lesson plans. We're always adding new resources, and you can see that we have a pretty good mix of different things that you can find on our website. These are all free to use, free to download lesson plans that come with basically anything you would need to do these, which is a handy thing to have. So that is us. That is us in Science North. And we really, what we aim for, what we try for as an organization is give you the tools that you need for the classroom, and that and just kind of be there as a resource. That's how I like to think of it, is that we're a resource that you can use to make your learning better and your teaching better and all that stuff. So that's a little bit about us. And now I want to talk a little bit about this project. So this is the ministry updated the science curriculum, as you're well aware. And what we did is we kind of identified that, hey, there's some changes here. There's some things that are a little different than what we're used to, or not exactly as expected. So we went in and we kind of worked to identify what some of those key changes are. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly on this one. So we identified some of those big changes. And this is the list that we came up with the STEM skills, research and experimentation, engineering, design process, hands-on learning, all this good stuff. All those, I would say, we had just in different places, but we also found that coding, technology, trades, contributions to science and technology, climate change, food literacy, all of these topics kind of became a little more prominent, and rightfully so. So what we did is that we really tried to provide you with the resources and support with these changes, these things that are new. So strand A got added in instead of our conventional 4 strands. We have 5 now. And part of that was the coding and emerging technologies portion of strand A. So we're going to do a coding lesson today, kind of look at how you can mix coding and science together, which is kind of fun. And then also in strand A is the part of about contributions to science and technology from various communities. So having like a more worldly point of view, more of a worldly perspective on things. So you'll see that when we developed our lesson series, a lot of that fell into that. So I'm just going to share that as well. These are the different lessons that we've developed as part of this. Let's see if I can make this bigger. Whoa, I don't need to be here for that. So you can see this is kind of our schedule. We're in our last set today and on Wednesday, or the last of them, which is wild to me. We've been doing so many of them. We've been doing this since October. But you can see when you look at that, where the focus is really on programming, Indigenous ways of knowing, and climate change, I would say, are the big three that we focus our lessons on. So if you miss any, you can go back and take a look at these. But for example, on week 1, we did a coding activity and one about Indigenous materials. Another one with Indigenous ways of knowing on that grade 2 one, and you kind of get the idea. So today is a coding one. It's called coding design. It fits into the grade 7 curriculum, as well as the Three Sisters planting, which it fits more into the diverse ways of knowing on that. So here is what we're looking at. It's really about giving you those resources, giving you the confidence, giving you the tools that you would need to succeed in this, so that you have a 21st century learner. So all of this is available to you. I should also mention the PowerPoint and the handouts and the lesson plans and all that will be available to you. They're going to head up there. On our website, if you found us here, you should be able to get the resources. If not, right now in due time, in a pretty short period of time. So, but this is what we're looking at today is the coding and design section is really about safety and design and kind of how different tools are used to ensure when design is done, that is done well. So we looked at the form, function, and design of structures unit and combine it with coding. And it's a lesson that uses a microbit to look at how we could use code to monitor things and keep track of things. And then we have our Three Sisters planting lesson. This was developed by one of her Indigenous interns, Shalene Rastool, who is unable to join today, but I'll do my best to share her lesson that she developed with you as well. And it really looks at kind of healthy traditional ways of growing plants. So that's what we're looking at. So it has strand A, so that contributions from different communities, and also strand B with the interactions in the environment, and just looking at then growing practices and healthy growing practices as well. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and we'll jump into the first lesson. So I'm going to get it set up. One of the things worth mentioning is that at 3:50, the Science Center closes. And as it closes, there's this really loud announcement that's only a little bit awkward. So I've been in the habit of not talking during it. So if I randomly stop talking in about 5 minutes at 3:50 for a minute, that's why, just as a warning. But let's jump into the heart of things today and take a look at our coding and design lesson. This is I really like this lesson. I think it's really cool. We had one of our staff develop this, and I was like really excited about this one. I think it's a really neat lesson that is a really fun way to integrate coding into science, and it has some really cool tools. So basically, the idea behind this lesson is the idea that when engineers or architects or technicians are building structures, one of the most important things that they look for is safety, which makes sense. You would hate to be in a building that collapses under you. That would be really bad. And there is kind of established guidelines and rules and regulations that are meant to be followed. But there are also tools that assist in ensuring that those regulations and guidelines and all those things are followed. So what we're looking at in this level is actually 3 different tools that we can use, and then we're going to basically recreate them using code, which is pretty cool. So in this, one of the things that is in this is a PowerPoint presentation to support this. So I'll do a quick share of that just so you can see it. Actually, I'm just going to share this entire window just so you can kind of get a sense. So I have them all open just for the sake of being able to share them a little more easily. I want to make that bigger. So there's a PowerPoint that comes with this one that talks about kind of the Why these tools are helpful. So it uses the idea of the leaning tower piece and the fact that it's not straight. Well, how would you remedy that? How would you make sure it's straight? It introduces a couple tools. So it uses the protractor, the goniometer, and a bubble level as kind of some examples in that. And then ultimately what we end up doing is using code to design these. So they're all really neat. They're all really fun. And then we also talk about earthquake detection and how we use technology to monitor for earthquakes and kind of provide an early warning to that. So all of this is described in the lesson plan. So there's a lesson plan that goes with it. It talks about each of these tools that we're looking at. And it's all in here. But more importantly, there's also, it's the same one. There is also a coding guide that goes with it. So this kind of allows you to go through and look at the code and kind of understand a little bit how it works and understand it as best you can. So that said, the whole point of these videos is to go through it together. So that's what I'm going to do today. Is I'm going to go and make code, and I'm going to walk us through the code so you have a bit more of an understanding of how it works. It's one thing to look at like a picture, it's another to actually do it. So we're going to do it. We're going to take a look. So 3 tools that we're looking at. The first is called a goniometer. It's used to measure angles, is essentially what it is. By basically, if you stand in place and rotate it, you can like point it at an object and kind of get a sense of the different angles that are present through this. And if you want to kind of incorporate some of the history of it, I think it's kind of neat. It's a really old tool, right? A lot of these tools were designed a long time ago and have been around because they worked for a long time. So goniometer or a protractor, you could also say, is used for measuring levels, and that's what this does. Is basically you're going to be able to put your microbit flat, and then basically if you want to see how tall a building is, for example, or you want to get a sense of, actually if you want to see how tall, you can do some cool trigonometry with this, which would be a fun addition to that. Basically put your microbit flat, and then as you tilt it, you see what the angle is. So let's start with that one. Let's go take a look. So the program that we like to use for all of our coding fun is microbit.makecode. I'm going to put, or makecode.microbit.org. I'm going to copy that link. I'm going to throw it in the chat for you so that, if you want to follow along as we do this, you can take a look. But here is the link. It's in the chat for you. And there's the pause.
Good afternoon. The Science Center will be...
All right, thank you for your patience as we get that sorted out. So basically, microbit.makecode is in my opinion the best program that we have for the microbit. There are a few other ones. There's there's a really good Python one as well if you want to explore as an older age group. I want to see if I can find it. It's just Python.microbit. It's kind of a neat one. I just want to switch over the screens. I don't know why I'm showing this. This has nothing really to do with what our lesson is today. But I just think it's kind of like an interesting kind of an extension. Is that there's also a Python program for microbit. which is kind of neat because it still has like all the things that we know and the ability to like drag your pieces in. So if you want to use a button, and choose the A button, you can see if it's A button press or B button press, what that text looks like, and you can drag it in and kind of see where it would fit, for example, and then have that code. So anyways, just a random share. I feel like by the time we get to 7.8, you start to get some students like, I want to try some different stuff. And text-based coding is kind of an interesting way to approach that. But we're going to stick with the tried and true. This works really, really well. And as you'll see today, you can do some really cool projects with it. So the first one we're going to build is the goniometer. It's a fancy way of saying a machine or a tool that measures angles. And so really the way this code works is it uses the accelerometer that's built into the microbit. So for all of these to get the full effect, you would want to have a physical copy of a microbit handy. As you can tell, I don't have any on me just for the sake of simplicity today and really focusing on the code. But I'll do my best to explain and kind of show how it works. So it uses the accelerometer, and specifically it uses the accelerometer in the X direction. So actually previously in the grade 3 lesson, if you're curious, we really talked about using the microbit to look at different directions, X, Y, and Z, and how you can do some scientific inquiry with that. So if you're like, I wonder if I want to lean into this with something else, that was a really cool lesson and would totally fit for grade 7s. But basically it's using the accelerometer in the X direction, and based off the value of X, it will kind of give a sense of the angle. So we don't need the on start for this. We will use the forever still. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And one of the things that we're going to do is that we're going to create a variable for the shifts in X. So basically, we're going to set our value X to whatever the acceleration is. And the reason that I'm using this variable instead of just straight with the acceleration is, for me at least, and this could be a preference thing, I just find it easier to work with a variable and knowing that I have something that I can manipulate and change and work within this. So the idea of the variable that once I have it, changes it grows, and it could be kind of anything through this. So what I'm going to do, I have this forever loop in here. The coding guide has a while true in there. I think that is an additional step that you probably don't actually need. I'm going to do it without it. I'm looking at it now and think, I don't know if we actually need it. It won't change anything. It's just like an extra fail safe is probably the way to describe it. But with coding, one of the things I always look for is like, how can I make my code more efficient? And then when I talk about that, I always mention to students, like, that's really what coding is all about, is that you're never going to code by yourself. You're always going to code with somebody else. So if you can share your code and make it simple and easy to follow, your coworkers or your boss, or if it's someone in a different department, it's just because it makes it a little easier to follow. So I'm going to see if I can make this code a little simpler, because you're watching this, so you might as well get a bit of a perk. So the first thing we did was we set the X value to the acceleration in the X direction. And just for argument's sake, I am going to put this show number in here. And I'm going to put the variable X in it. And you can see, if depending on how I tilt it, it's we're all the way to 1023 in this direction. You can see it's probably easier to see right now at that right hand side. Right, if I go all the way over here, negative 1023, positive. If I go this way, up and down, this is actually in the Y direction, so this won't actually help. So in this case, we're kind of going side to side to measure the angle in the X direction. But we're actually going to do a little bit of math to make this a little bit easier and kind of work with that. So I'm going to throw in an if statement here, and basically what we're doing is establishing our conditions, our range. We just for the math that we're doing, it kind of works better within this range. So if I put in this if true here, I'm going to drop it in, and I'm going to establish a range here because we're kind of looking for between 0 and 180 degrees. And we don't want kind of more than that. So if this is our 0, we kind of have within 180. The reason we're going from 0 to 980 is that we don't want the negatives in this. We're basically, our 0 is our baseline, and we just kind of want to go up and down. We don't want to get into negatives. So that's why we're establishing this. And again, this is another one where I would probably go all the way to that 1023. I think 980 was put in there as just like, that's probably pretty close to the high point of it. But I think there's probably nothing wrong with going all the way to the end on that. And that's one of those things with coding, is that there's different ways to do this. So this was one of our newest, or I wouldn't say new staff, he's been with us for a while. It's a Ukrainian gentleman who's joined us. He's working at Thunder Bay, and he is a coding guru, and put this together. Like I said, I was so impressed by the work that I really wanted to share it. But when he set up in the coding guide, he set up the range probably differently than what I do. But again, it's not going to really make a big difference. It's a preference thing. And I think that's what a lot of coding is that there's a lot of different ways to get the same result. And however you set up and try to get to that result, it gets in the same thing. So let's try it for argument's sake. And if this doesn't work, I would love to be proven wrong, because that's what coding is, trying things and like, oh, it doesn't work. I guess then I have to go the other way. So I set up my range between 0 and 1023. So my X value, whatever I grab, there's my 1023, there's my negative. I only want to go one way. So I basically have a flat surface and then I lift it up. I'm not going below that 0 is what I'm doing here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of math to just kind of make that a little bit easier to work with. So we're going to go into variables, and we're going to grab this set one here. And we're going to grab we're a few different blocks. So we're going to start with a round. So the round basically takes, if you have like some math happening, instead of having like some ugly decimals, it rounds it. It makes it a cleaner number to work with. So I'm going to add this multiplication here, and I'm going to grab this. I duplicated it with a right click, put this here, and put a divide here. And basically, we're going to take the X value, whatever it is in that range. We're going to rounds. We're going to take it. And we're going to divide by 2,000. The reason we're dividing is just to make it a smaller scale, and then multiply it by 180 to get kind of a range between 0 and 180 on that. So just some math, some manipulation down here. One to kind of make it an easier, smaller number to work with, and then the multiplication by 180 to get it in what you would expect. You know, the full circle is 360, but since we're going from 0 to the other way, we would expect it to be between 0 and 180 instead. So we're just doing some manipulation of this just to kind of get some cleaner numbers and some cleaner results here. So we took X, we multiplied it by, we divide by 2,000, multiplied by 80, and round it to that. Basically, if it's less than 0 in this case, we're just going to set X to 0 in this case. So I'm going to throw on a weight here, so it's not like we don't lose it right away, maybe of half a second. But the idea now is that if you place it flat and you kind of like angle it, you get kind of an angle. So for example, at this, we're about 87 degrees. Here is about 64 degrees, and you get smaller, about 44 degrees. So if you have it flat on the table and you change that, you kind of get those degrees. So there's 42, for example. So, but if I go the other way, it's just set to 0. So I don't have anything on there because it's too far the other way. So the idea is that we get that range and we're able to show some different things. So we're probably looking about 40 on here because I can't go too far on this. But as you get kind of more range from the microbit, your numbers would grow as a result. So here's that project. If there are any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments or in the chat right now. Kind of some interesting math going on there to make it a little bit easier. But we also do talk about it in the coding guide as well as about how that works. But if there are no questions, I'm going to create a new project with the level. I find the level one really neat. I think it's really, really cool. Basically, the idea with this microbit is that you can put it on something, and then depending if it's unlevel in the X or Y direction, it will show you what way to move it. And then if it's perfectly level, it will like show a dot in the middle. It's really, really cool. This is a really fun one. So, and I think if I had to choose from the three, I would say this is the most like practical one in the sense that students would use this and it would work really well. I really, really like this one. So I'm going to call it the bubble level. It's what it is, right? You know, that bubble of water, we've all seen it. We're good at that. This one uses forever loop as well. And it uses acceleration once again, but it's going to use it in both the X and the Y direction. So in this case, we need variables for both X and a variable for Y in this one, because we're going to use both, and then we're basically going to be plotting a value. So what we're doing here is we're taking the acceleration and we're kind of establishing a range on the microbit between negative 600 and positive 600, and then using that as our gauge, and then adjusting accordingly. So we are going to throw in a clear screen to start. We're just going to start with a fresh screen every time we start this. Put a cleaner screen here. Then we're going to put an if else here. We're going to put an if. And essentially what we're going to do, we're going to keep hitting this plus to add more and more conditions. We're putting a range of conditions. So if it's really far to the left, we're going to plot a point very far to the left. If it's skewed to the, here's my hand, if it's skewed to the left and put a point to the left, it's skewed really far to the other direction. We want to point a point that way, and then basically once it gets closer to the level, it will level out. It's anyways, it's cool. You'll see. So in this case, we're using acceleration again, and we're going to use this logic for comparison. So the comparison is basically what's establishing our baseline. And we're going to go through this a few times. So we're going to grab the acceleration in the X direction, acceleration for X. And we're going to put our low end on the kind of if we skew one side at negative 600. We've seen it goes further than that, but it's kind of that idea that, well, if it's more tilted than that, you're clearly not straight. So keep going until you're at least within negative 600, right? So at least within negative 600. But you can see when we get to the middle and it's flat, we should be close to zero, basically, is what we're looking for. So with that said, we're going to be able to level it, kind of get it center. So negative 600 is our value here. We're going to go in and we're going to set our X to zero on this. So zero on this grid corresponds with the left-hand side of dots here. So the LEDs all have different values to them. So the left is 0. The next one is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if it's really far this way, it's setting to 0. It's saying, okay, you're too far on one side. If it's really far on this side, we want to set it to 4. And basically what we're looking for is that if we're in that sweet spot where it's really close to level, it's going to sit in column 2. So this is an interesting one. We picked a very generous range. You can make this more accurate by changing the numbers. So if you look at the coding guide, it goes 600, between 300 and 600, between negative 300 and positive 300, which is our middle. So that would be kind of a not super sensitive one, right? You can see negative 300 happens fairly quick. But if you did negative 200 to 200, negative 100 to 100, you can choose the precision of this and make it more and more accurate based off how you code it. But I'm going to stick with what we've got. I think it's a really nice example and it works really well. And why change that? So I didn't need that block. I was looking for an and block. The and blocks are nice because it allows for multiple conditions. So the first one, if it's greater than or less than 600, so this should be positive. We're going in the opposite direction here. Yeah, because anyways, it's opposite because if it's too far on the positive, it's showing it's left, and we're trying to get the bubble to come back down in the middle. Sorry, I misspoke there. But I'm going to grab this. I'm going to duplicate this whole thing and throw this in here. I'm going to put greater than or equal to 300. So this is if it's greater than 300. I'm going to make that smaller so you can see more of it. Then I'm going to grab this duplicate and put this one here and put the other end of the range. So if so what this is saying is that, okay, my first one is if it's bigger than 600. My next one is if it's bigger than 300 and less than 600. In theory, you could do this without this second condition here because we've already established that. It's already, well, we're going to see if it's bigger than 600. If it's not bigger than 600, it must be bigger than 300. But this is kind of an additional step that works and helps keep that clean. And I think the real value of having this block here is that you can see the range between 300 and 600. We're going to set that Y value to 1. And then we're going to establish our next range. So I'm going to grab this whole thing and duplicate it and put the whole thing in here. So my next range that I want is greater than or equal to negative 300. And then less than 300. So this was what we had before, was the 300. And then if it's greater than or equal to negative 300 in this case, we have that range. I'm going to assign this one to 2. And these should all be X, not Y, as I'm looking at that. We will do Y later. And the Y one is a very easy thing because you do the exact same thing and then just change the numbers. And then we're going to add 1 less 1. This is our last kind of range on this. We're going to grab this, put it in here. The last one that we're looking for is that if it's greater than or equal to negative 600 and less than negative 300 in this case. So that's our last range. You can see if it's that, so this is between negative 300 and positive 600. I can grab this and set that X to 3. And then if it's not any of those, if it's bigger, then it's got to be 4. So it's too far on the other way. So that's kind of our range on that. So now if you look at this though, if I go too far on this side, I have to plot the number. It's like, it's not showing. So, well, yeah, I haven't shown anything to plot yet. So I don't have the X and Y in yet, but I'll put my X here and I'll put my Y here because we're going to get to the Y, and I'm going to put a wait pause of, let's put 200 milliseconds. Pause can be whatever you want it to be. But you can see now, as I'm too far this way, it goes all the way left. That's not okay. I'm going to get more level. As I'm getting closer to the middle, it comes in. As I get kind of closer to the middle, it's in the middle part. But if I start to go the other way, it goes too far. So if I were to put this on a table, it tells me this way. I know I have to adjust. Say I'm putting up a picture to go the other way. It'd be cool to get students to try to hang something or build something using a level using this and see how level it is compared to an actual bubble level. But you can see, depending on where you go, it kind of points you into how close you are to being level. Now, the next piece of this is really to do this again with Y, which is a lot of work if you redo it. But if you grab the whole thing and duplicate the whole thing and put it underneath, and then I'm going to zoom back in. I know you can't see that. That's too far zoomed in. Basically, you can go in and change this to Y on all of them. We're using the exact same range. So we're going to set Y. Here for acceleration is Y. Here for acceleration is Y. And set X is Y. 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 I sound like a toddler right now if anyone has kids. But why? But why? Why? And we're just changing all these to Y. We're doing the exact same thing. It's the exact same code. We're establishing a range. And then we're putting it in, and then we're adding all of that in there. It's still plotting X and Y and a pause. So now when we look at it, it's perfect level. It's right in the middle. If I tilt too far on this way, it's going to tell me you're too far at the top. So I can come back in and then there we go, it's pretty level, and if I go the other way, it comes in. But also if I start to go this direction, for example, I can see that I need to like come back in. Oh, there we go. So you can see kind of how that works a little bit. That depending where you are, it kind of pushes you in the opposite direction. So you see where that bubble is and how you level it, and also you end up in the middle. So anyways, I think this one is super cool. I really, really like it. I think it's a great little activity and an interesting way to kind of understand how technology works, right? So you can get levels that have kind of some numbers in it and some of that in there and some coding in it, and that's really what it would be working with, is an accelerometer that's basically outputting it based off that. So it's a very real world application in that sense that if anyone's using a level that has a display, that's probably exactly how it's working. The last one, there's a lot of coding in this one, is a seismometer. So seismometers are used for earthquakes, and really to kind of provide a warning if there's an earthquake on this one. So there's two parts to this. There's one where you just build it, the other where you have it more sensitive. I'm not going to look at the more sensitive one for time, as I'm very aware that we've got about 15 minutes left. I guess we have as long as we need to go, but we don't have a ton of time left. So we'll just look at this one because I do want to make sure we look at the other one. The other one is the other lesson, grade 7 lesson, is an agriculture one, and really looking at kind of healthy ways of growing things. So for the earthquake one, we're going to basically put it on shake. So most buildings that are in areas that are prone to earthquakes would have some kind of warning system to kind of display that, hey, like there's shaking happening. In this case, we use the on shake on this. So if you look at the extension for this, you can actually modify the sensitivity for it, right? If I like shake, I have the TV remote, it like this, yeah, that's obviously an earthquake, but P waves, which are early precursors to earthquakes, are much more sensitive. So it'd be like very small shakes. And if you like the extension, it will show you how to make it more sensitive. So if it's like very small shakes, it would set off the alarm. But in this case, this is an alarm that would grab big shakes. Basically, when it feels a shake, if you were to put this on a building or something, and all of a sudden it starts shaking, it will flash some lights. It will play the middle tone and C. You can do any sound. You can play a song. I'm going to do it a quarter beat on this one. And a pause. I'm going to put a pause of 100 and a clear screen. So this is basically truly what it is an earthquake alarm. And the idea that like, oh, something's happening. There's like action. So if you look at this, if I shake it, the lights go on, and it beeps 3 times. If you put the clear screen in here, earlier, this is kind of an interesting trick of coding, is where you put the blocks really does make a difference. This will have it flash. So interesting like piece of coding on there, right? Depending on where you have the pause, it would change that, but it's the idea that if there's a shake. With the other one, the addition to this, it's the addition of an if statement, and then based off how high the shaking is. So if it's anyways, it basically shifts it or changes it based off the sensitivity. So it's not a huge change from this one. It's an if statement with the absolute value of acceleration and different thresholds. We looked at the thresholds in the other one. You basically adjust that to get the threshold that you're looking for on that one. Whew. Okay, so anyways, 3 really cool lessons or 3 really interesting activities. Each of those is really focused on taking technology that is out there, right? Things that are being used every day by engineers or architects or technicians or whatever it may be to design buildings and make sure buildings are safe. You want things to be level so that things aren't falling or that things have the same amount of force, right? If you think about it, if a building is not level, it's tilted. This beam, tilted. It's so hard to say. I'm mirrored in the camera, and that's what I'm looking at. This one down here, is getting more force than anything up here because it's supporting more of the load, for example, right? So things aren't level, the forces are off, things aren't off, and that's symmetry. A lot of design comes down to symmetry because of safety, and if you don't have that, it kind of really changes it. So, anyways, with that said, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. If you would rather ask me questions later, you can also send me an email, educators@sciencenorth.ca, and I'm happy to help out and take a look at that. So the other lesson that we have is basically an inquiry-based lesson where students have the opportunity to, there we go, to kind of understand how different growing conditions can change things and how it works. And really it has a comparison between monoculture and polyculture farming and agriculture. So this is the intro for this one is really, really thorough and really good. So I'm not going to go through all of it. You could go through and read it yourself and get a pretty good idea of it. But this is a lesson that was developed by one of our Indigenous interns, Shailene Rastool. She included a bit of a bio about herself, so you can kind of learn more from her. And she wanted to look into the Three Sisters growing method, which is a method that's used by many different Indigenous communities, where squash, maize, and climbing beans are all planted together. So rather than planting vegetables one by themselves, you take kind of advantage of the fact that all three of these have a benefit. So as it establishes here, as it talks about, it's companion planting. It's the plants growing together. Corn stalks serve as a trellis for the beans, so the corn stalks go first, the beans grow around it. The beans provide nitrogen to the roots, which helps the corn and the squash. And then the leaves from the squash provide shade, keeping soil moist and preventing weeds. So all three of them kind of benefit from each other and work in harmony with each other to get better results. So ultimately, the idea here is that if you're to do them individually, do corn in one spot, beans in another, and squash in the other, it wouldn't work as well as if you were to do all three together. So a lot of that is explained throughout here, kind of the different methods between monoculture and polyculture. The Three Sisters being a polyculture, that shared method. Shailene talks a little about the different Indigenous communities that we've used that, such as the Haudenosaunee as well, and then introduces monoculture. So monoculture, I'm going to share my screen for this. You can go read it if you want. I'll just kind of have that conversation. Monoculture is really the farming that we see more commonly now with farming and crops because it allows for maximum production and maximum yield. So as far as it's like a quick, easy win, it doesn't necessarily, and higher revenue as well. It doesn't necessarily have the same ability to kind of sustain long-term healthy growing. Right. So if you go drive and you see only corn, it's really easy to do that because you need the same growing conditions. You don't need to have specialized soil or change any conditions for anything. It's just kind of this is what works. We're going to do it. We're going to grow it. We're going to cut it down. We're going to grow it and cut it down. And it kind of works. But the flip side of that is to maintain that and kind of establish that. You really have to deal with pests because pests go hey, look at all this corn. I am a pest that eats corn. And then if the one thing starts eating corn, it's eating all of it, which leads to more pesticide use, which is problematic. But it also increases more water use, which is less great for the environment. And if you're doing things with pests, it doesn't help the pollinator. So what we were talking about earlier with the Three Sisters is that squash leaves provide shade to the corn and to the beans. And when there's shade, the soil dries out less, so you need less water. So it's helping each other. But when you don't have that shade, you're just watering constantly. So the monoculture farming is really good for making money, but it's not really good for the environment. It doesn't have that long-term sustainability. It also causes soil degradation. So there's no balance in the soil. So if we look at the Three Sisters again, the beans, or adding nitrogen to the soil as well, which is something they need that the other two aren't providing. So if you don't have that balance, you're not getting those same things. Now, if we flip it the other way to that polyculture farming, you're going to make less money, less yields, but you kind of have the advantage that it's more sustainable, it's better for the environment, and it also kind of has a little bit of resistance long term to like food security. Because if you have a pest that targets specifically corn, you still have the beans and the squash that are surviving and thriving and able to live. So it adds a little bit of security to that. The flip side of this, right, and this is like, yeah, but why wouldn't you just do this all the time, is that it's a little more complicated. You need more knowledge to be able to do that. You're now maintaining 3 or 4 or 5, right? You can have polyculture farming with multiple things. You have multiple things, and you need expertise in each of these, and then how they work together. So it requires more knowledge. It's not like plant it, I just do corn, it grows, it's easy, it's peasy, easy and peasy. That's what it is. And then it just grows and I can harvest it. It doesn't kind of work that way. So when we look into the lesson here, it's really about students getting the opportunity to try this for themselves and kind of see the difference. So what you need for the lesson is really 4 pots, some soil, shovels, corn seed, bean seeds, squash seeds, and a watering can, and then potting soil. I think I already mentioned that. And then essentially what you're doing is that you're planting 2 pots. Well, not 2 pots, you're planting 4. In 1 pot, you're going to plant the 3 sister seeds together. There's instructions on like spacing and depth for that in the lesson plan. So if you've never planted any of those, that kind of works. You're going to need a big pot because they're all like squash. As everyone's just planted squash, they're huge vegetables, so you need kind of some room for that. You can do that outside or with a large pot. You put the potting soil in, and then you basically soak the seeds ahead of time to help them germinate, put them in, and then do it together. So you have 1 pot with the 3 sisters, the corn, the maize, the beans, and the squash. And then with your other pots, you do 1 pot for squash, 1 pot for the corn, and 1 pot for the beans. I would recommend us doing this in like May, starting in May or so that you have some time to see the growth. You might want to have to do this indoors depending on your weather, or you can do this outdoors if you have a long enough growing season. And then basically it's about maintaining it. So watering it when you need to. So there's instructions on maintenance in the lesson plan that kind of helps you like keep track of like how wet dry the soil is, and kind of weeding things out and just kind of helping them grow. But really, ultimately, what it comes down to is it's a comparison, and it's to compare how these different seeds grow, whether they're together or whether they're separate. So there's a handout that goes with it. Every week, there's kind of you would get your students to measure using the handout the height of the plants. So what the general height of the plants is. So I think it's divided by beans, corn, and squash, and kind of as a whole. Then you kind of measure the height and make observations about their health and all that. Then you compare it to the ones that are done by themselves. And ultimately, you can get your students to predict, and there's some questions at the end that will kind of help guide that. But what you should be seeing, and you can see there's like there's answers to questions that need answers in there to help you with that. But ultimately, what you should be seeing here is that the ones planted with the 3 sisters growing method is going to grow better because they support each other. They each provide something that the other needs, but doesn't have, but that the others don't have, so that they kind of work together to allow for that growth. So it's not a lesson that shows really well like online. I'm just using my hands a whole bunch because I don't have 8 weeks to do this webinar with you. It would be fun if we did it. But I don't have that. But that's okay. I think you get the idea of it. But again, if you do have questions, let us know. We'd be happy to help you out with that and answer any of your questions and go from there. So I'm going to leave that up there. I'm also going to copy a link for a survey and throw that in the chat. We're always just curious to know what you think of these. and what we could do differently, what you enjoyed, what was like, I wonder if I would have done that differently, or there's other things I want to learn about. I'm going to put that in there. It's in the chat, and I'm going to share my screen as well, because we also have a QR code. So I'm going to take this banner off, and then I'm going to share my screen. So if you would like to do the survey, it helps. It's something that we really value. We really feedback is a gift. Someone told me that once. I'm like, that's a great way to look at. And so we grow. That's how we do better. And look at new things. So this doesn't. This is our grade 7 one. It's our second last one. That doesn't mean this is the end of us producing lessons and videos. And we'd love to hear what your thoughts are and what you'd like to see more of. So if you want to do the survey, if you're doing this online, grab the QR code now. It's also in the chat. If you're doing this afterwards, pause the video, grab that QR code. It's there. You can learn, do some cool stuff, do that survey. And then, that's basically it. So with that said, as I really awkwardly explain how QR codes work, that's all that I have for you today. So I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being here and taking the time. I know you're busy. You have so much going on. But I appreciate you coming in and viewing this live or after the fact. You still took the time to check this out. If you have questions, let us know. We're here for you. And we hope to see you around. We have one last one on Wednesday for grade 8s. And then you'll be able to go and check on these anytime you want. So thank you so much. We hope you have an excellent day. And we look forward to chatting with you in the future. Have a good one.